Ja? Welcome, Gladys.
Hi, wait. We have 2 seconds. It's setting up your Facebook
I know,
Live.
but you don't mind if I drink my coffee, right?
I don't mind. I drink my juice.
I wouldn't go anywhere without it.
So I think everybody's watching us now doing that. So hi, everyone. I'm Gladys Mizrahi. For those who don't know me, I'm Commissioner of the City of Aventura and the founder of the Power of the Heels. And today, my special guest is Rabbi Forta from Aventura Chabad. So, Rabbi, good morning. And
good morning.
I really appreciate taking the time to speak to us. I know that this is a very complicated time. And
it's our December.
It's our December. I get it. It's New Year, it's December, it's complicated, it's COVID.
COVID, absolutely.
And to add everything, I wanted to talk to you for a very special reason. We started September, and September is Suicide Prevention Month. And I know that it's really hard for people right now. Suicides have been increasing, and I wanted to get your take on this. How can we help? How can we help, and how can we support the community?
So Suicide Prevention Month obviously is a extremely important month on the calendar. It's not so much that it's an important month, it's more that it's an important thing to be aware of and to be talking about. Actually, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, September 10th is the actual official International Suicide Prevention Day. That's of this year, September 10th. But really the whole month is about suicide prevention, and it's about an awareness more than suicide prevention. The truth is that suicide prevention and being cognizant of the reality of suicide, that is human beings considering harming themselves or taking their lives, is something that actually we need to be cognizant about and we need to be aware of all year round, not just in September. But the idea of highlighting a month and giving it homage and making it something public is very important for many reasons. Above all, awareness. You see, the first thing is that what we need to do, and I'm a rabbi in a community, and Gladys, you're a commissioner in the city of Aventura, and we're both in a position of being there for the community and in helping in different ways, as are many other public figures within our community, Aventura, which, by the way, you have on your thing, Nosotros Somos Aventura. I've always said, even since before you were a commissioner, that I am Aventura. And I love our city.
Together we are Aventura.
I'll share it with you. How's that? So the reality is that we, as leaders in the community, as well as any regular citizens, have a certain moral and ethical obligation to be acquainted and to be knowledgeable somewhat in the extent of suicide in our world today, the extent of adults entertaining the idea of harming themselves, and ultimately many tragically going through with it. I don't know if you know the numbers, but the numbers are incredible. The World Health Organization estimates that worldwide, that is, close to 1 million people will actually harm themselves and terminate their lives. And that's a tragedy of the greatest proportions. In the US alone, the numbers are close to 50,000 a year that will harm themselves and terminate their lives. So it's a tragedy of the greatest proportions. Life in Judaism, and I'll tell you as a rabbi, life in Judaism is considered sacred. It's considered holy. And we go out of our way to do everything we can to preserve, to enhance, and to extend life. And so when we're dealing with something like suicide, where an individual, a human being, is considering harming themselves or terminating their lives, it's something that has to be taken very seriously. And we have to go out of our way to be positive forces to help those people and to prevent them from actually following through on their actions. And so there are 3 steps without me. If you want to say something, just jump in anytime, because I'm good at talking, by the way.
Oh, no, I know that you're good at talking.
I can go for a half hour, no problem. So there are 3 primary steps, Gladys. There are 3 very important steps that one has to take and highlighted and be aware of in the month of September. And it should roll over to the whole year. It shouldn't just be in September. The first thing is connect. We need to connect to people. And connecting to people is so important, because you will never know how your small interaction of connecting with someone will ultimately impact their lives and change the course of destiny forever. And I want to share with you something actually that happened, I believe 3 years ago. Young boy Mark was leaving junior high school, and he saw another kid ahead of him walking. This kid had a pile of books. It was the end of the school year, and he had his baseball mitt, and he had a baseball bat, and he had sweaters, and he had a backpack, and everything was piled up really, really high. And as the kid was walking, everything came tumbling down. And so this Mark goes over to this kid that he's actually not even aware of, and didn't even know he was in the same school as him. And he helped him pick up his books, and he helped him, and he saw that the kid couldn't handle. He asked him, where does he live? And he told him he lives 3 blocks up the street. He said, you know what, I'm walking that way. Let me help you. And he carries half his stuff with him. And while they're walking, he learns that this young boy's name is Bill, and that Bill has been in the school the same time as he has. He'd actually never, ever even noticed him. And they're talking, and they're schmoozing the way that they should be. They finally get to Bill's house, and Bill invites him in for a cold Coke, and he goes in and he sits down, and he has a soda with him, and they're talking. They ended up building somewhat of a friendship. Mark would say later, years later, that he felt that Bill was not as socially savvy perhaps as he was, but he felt at least a nice friendship with him, and they had what to talk about. They ended up finishing junior high and going to high school together. They end up graduating high school, and they go to college. They end up in the same college. It was on the day of graduation, when they both went up to get the diploma that they had graduated, that Bill goes to his friend Mark, and he tells him, listen, I want to share something with you. First of all, I want to thank you for my graduation. He said, you thank me for your graduation? I didn't take your test for you. What do you mean, thank you for your graduation? He says, no, listen carefully. I want to share something with you that you're not aware of, but I want you to know. You see, you might not remember, at the end of junior high school, one day I was walking with tons of stuff. I had cleared out my entire locker, and I was packed, and I was leaving to go home. Actually, my intention was to take my life that night. I was going to act on my thoughts of suicide. I was actually going to do it. The reason why I had all my stuff with me was because I had cleared out my locker so that after I had terminated my life, I wouldn't leave a mess behind for my family to have to go and pick up things. I wanted to leave it all together. You stopped me, and you started talking to me, and you helped me. And in communicating with me, I enjoyed the conversation. And then when I got to my house, after 9 minutes of walking, you actually came in and gave me the time of day, and you had a Coke with me, and you spoke with me. And I realized after you left my house that afternoon, that if I terminate my life this evening, like as planned, I'm going to miss that conversation with you. And so I decided not to terminate my life. And I want you to know, Mark, it was only because you helped me pick up my books, and you walked with me, and you heard me, and you created some kind of friendship. And therefore, I want to thank you for this graduation, for me graduating college, and ultimately the university degree, is because you didn't only help me carry the books that day, but you actually helped me save my life. This graduation is because of your doing. That's a true story. And I think that story is very, very beautiful, because I think it teaches us something very, very profound, crucial about suicide prevention. And that is, sometimes it's a caring hello, a good morning, a cheerful smile, some form of connection.
Gonna change the life of someone.
A connection could change the course of history and redefine destiny for any human being. So I think number one, in this time of suicide prevention, is to connect. Number two is to discuss. You see, there's a certain fear and stigma that people have about discussing mental health issues. And I get it, it's very uncomfortable.
When you say discuss, the biggest question that people have when somebody actually goes through it, they go, I wish I had known. I wish I could have done something. So that's the biggest thing. That's the classical thing. I didn't know.
Right. So precisely for that reason, we need to proactively discuss these things so that we can find out. You know, most people are shy. because it's very, very uncomfortable to talk about somebody perhaps considering, terminating their lives, taking their lives. And so it's not a comfortable conversation. But the reality is that often people that are considering suicide are dying for somebody to reach out to them. They're almost waiting for that moment that somebody reaches out to throw them a safety ring for them to not go ahead with it. I don't know if you know the numbers, but they're astounding, that the amount of people that contemplated suicide but didn't actually go through with it were so relieved after the fact. And so suicide is reversible.
Of course it's reversible.
And the way it reverses is by reaching out. So when I say discuss it, I mean, don't be shy to discuss it. I was talking to a woman a few months ago because my wife and I, about a year ago, took a suicide prevention course. Because the reality is that it's a reality that many are considering, taking their lives. So we went and took a course on suicide prevention to become advocates to help people not go through with the plan that they were anticipating. And actually, believe it or not, we had one planned for the community here at Aventura Chabad, but COVID came along and changed our plans. So we had to cancel that. We'll reschedule it when social distancing is not an issue. But ultimately, we had it planned for the community because we need advocates for suicide prevention. And discussing it is a very, very important topic. It's not a comfortable topic, but it has to be had. And she told me, this teacher, she was great. She was in a grocery store, and she just saw the way the cashier was responding to her. And she was having a really down day. And instinctively, because she does this all day long, she turned to her and said, "Are you considering suicide?" And the woman looked at her and said, "How did you know?" And she had never met this woman before. It was in a Publix, a grocery store. And this young woman was considering taking her life. She spoke to her and she got her help. So discussing it is very, very important. It's uncomfortable. Well, a lot of important things are uncomfortable. It's got to be done.
I'm going to tell you a true story also.
Please.
I mentor underprivileged kids for the organization Women of Tomorrow. And my school is in Broward, where 98% of the girls are Black girls that need to go to school, and after they have a job, and then they need to help their mother take care of their kids. So these are girls that are really struggling to get ahead and break the cycle of poverty. When we were discussing, and this is something that I want to touch on, there was the movie 13 Reasons Why. And it was very controversial because a lot of parents were not letting the kids watch it. And I asked permission to touch on the subject with the girls. They gave me permission because their counselor was there, another of the mentors were there, and we started talking about it. And I realized that one of the girls was asking a very tough question. I saw it in her eyes. But when there are minors that you cannot get involved, I reach out to the counselor and I said, this girl needs help. 8 days later, I get a note from the counselor. You just saved a life. So why was everybody so against watching 13 Reasons Why? It explained exactly what they were thinking. It went back to the feelings that the other person did. It went back to touching on the bully side that these kids are facing now. So why is it that parents are really not letting us have that conversation? Because it's not only having the hard conversation, it's also having the permission to have the conversation. So it's a double.
It's a funny that you touch upon that point, because I've had a conversation with someone who basically had the same philosophy of not touching upon the suicide topic. And the reason that they had it was a legitimate reason. They were worried, meaning in their mind, it was a legitimate reason. They were worried that by having that topic, that you may be implanting ideas of suicide in somebody that is vulnerable, that wasn't ever planning on taking their lives. So I've had someone tell me that they didn't want to have the topic because they didn't want to create an idea in the young person's mind that they might actually go through with it. So it's a fair point.
It's a valid point.
Yeah.
It's a completely valid point.
I still think speaking about it is more important than not speaking about it, because one thing that people do want is clarity and to be upfront. And so I think speaking about it is a more important point than hiding it, because ultimately, it's a matter of
you can give them a hand,
and it's a matter of seconds for it to be too late. This is something that's a one-way street. I mean, once somebody takes their lives, it's over. So you can't afford to be, walk on eggshells and touch upon it with light hands. It needs to be addressed in a very open, clear, concise fashion, to turn the tide on the devastating numbers of suicides annually.
Correct. So the third point, before I ask you something else, it's connect, discuss, and what's the third?
Search for resources, because there are resources out there. There are resources, there is knowledge, and there's help. I'll tell you that 1 in 15 Americans, and this is the number from the World Health Organization, 1 in 15 Americans suffers from some form of depression. Those are real numbers.
I think it's larger than 1 in 15.
That's what, okay, could be, but that's what they officially state. The good news is that between 80 and 90% of them will actually do very, very well with treatment. Okay? So there are resources out there. Right. There is help. And I'm not only talking about medical help, and this is go back to September being Suicide Prevention Month. There's a lot of resources out there for the average citizen, not for the doctors, not for the psychiatrists, not for the psychologists, not for the professional, the mental health professionals, for the average citizen who's not a mental health professional. There are resources out there that give you the 3-1 ABC steps, simple steps that you can do to be an advocate for perpetuating life as opposed to allowing death. And I'm going to say something that I think is very harsh, but I really believe it. I think that when somebody is having a mental health crisis and they're considering terminating their life, and you were present and you could have said something that might have changed it, but you were shy to do so, or you weren't at all knowledgeable of any form of verbiage or resources to use, then I think, I don't want to say you're guilty because that would be a tragic thing to say, but I do want to say that you definitely lost in a moment to save a life. And that in itself is another tragedy. So one has to look for resources. There are tons of resources out there. Everybody has to be a little bit acquainted, not much, just a couple of little acquainted, so that when the issue arises and when the moment is ripe, you can just put in one good word and something that will trigger an effect that will stop the person from terminating their lives.
Talking about resources, are you aware that the city has provided a 24/7 mental health line?
No, I had no idea. That's beautiful.
Okay, if you go to the cityofaventura.com, you will find the phone, which I'm going to put it right now. Let me tell you which one it is. And that phone is 24/7.
Amazing.
24/7 in English and in Spanish. So whoever needs the phone, it's 1-833-848-1762 or 833-848-1764. 24/7. I've had people during this crisis especially that have called and have gotten the help that they need.
Beautiful. Amazing.
So I know the resources, we need those resources, but let me ask you something. I heard you say, yes, 80% of the people do very well with treatment. But there's also the treatments that trigger the suicide thoughts. So there is a thin balance between the antidepressants and the ones that trigger those thoughts. So what happens then? As a parent, as a leader, how do you choose? How do you recognize those?
It's a very, very true reality, and that is that medicine always, every medicine has some kind of side effect. And there are medicines that have a side effect of suicidal thoughts. There are. I mean, if either I or someone in my family, because I remember reading on a medicine bottle, has had medicines that have had written on the side of the bottle, if you have suicidal thoughts, stop the medication and call your doctor. Yes, they do exist. Healing, giving medicine always has side effects to it. Some are suicidal things, thoughts, and some will be other kind of side effects. The doctors, obviously, that are prescribing these medicines have to be aware and cognizant of who they're giving what to. And not only that, family members, more importantly, have to be very, very in touch with their beloved family. And if they see or suspect anything out of the ordinary, and ordinary is relative,
What's ordinary?
they need to get involved. I got to tell you that family first can be the most crucial components to helping someone that's going through suicidal thoughts.
Correct. But for example, and I really bring this back again, when watching in detail the 13 Reasons Why, this girl's parents were the last to find out. They had no clue, because with teenagers, they don't share with their parents anything. They just bottle everything up. And what do you think? Yes, they're stressed because of school, they have homework, but they cannot get it out of them. So this is the part that we need to create awareness on the kids of seeking for help.
Peers, friends.
Seeking out the peers, the friends, of saying, hello, my friend needs help.
Yep, absolutely. So that was point number 2, discuss it.
Discuss it.
And don't be shy to discuss it, because ultimately by hiding it, it's potentially causing a greater risk than the other one is. They don't want you to implant the ideas in the mind. I think not discussing it is a greater risk.
And in a teenager's world is you're not going to be a tattletale. But in this case, you are. And it can save a life. It doesn't matter.
They know the value. If one is taught the value of life and the sanctity of life, yes, and the holiness of life and the endless potential of life. So the value of life and the importance of life needs to be conveyed. And ultimately, we need to encourage those teenagers to, it's not to tell, but it's to look out for one another.
I'm going to ask you something. When I was little, the cemetery in Colombia had all the way out there the people that had committed suicide. Because according to religion, according to the Jewish religion, anybody that has committed suicide would not be able to be buried in the normal place where everybody else was. And I remember looking at that, seeing, but nobody's even asking, or nobody knew what happened. Like, there's a story behind everything.
A world behind it.
A world. And now with new medications that can literally trigger suicide, how do you deal with that? How is the funeral? Are you still prohibiting somebody that has committed suicide to be buried in the same way as everybody else? I know that for Jewish life, in the Jewish religion, every life is sacred, valuable, and it's treated different.
So I think before I answer that, we need to just go back, take one step back, and actually define what the Jewish law says, because it's not exactly it's not exactly like you stated. It could be, and I'm sure it was in Colombia back in the day. You saw a separate section in the cemetery. The reality is that Jewish law says that your life, your body, is sacred. That means that besides your physical life that you live in this world, there is a divine mission. There is something great for you to accomplish in this world that is exclusive for you, with your faculties, with your strengths, with your personality, with your unique qualities. In other words, there is some great quality in every human being that another doesn't have. There is some unique, exceptional ability that one human being has that another doesn't have. And between the mesh of different personalities and different qualities, we can create a web of a perfect world. That's the fundamental of Jewish thought. So when somebody decides to terminate their lives, essentially, besides the fact that they have taken their life and terminated it, they've also left a perpetual void in the world that we all share. And so it's considered something when somebody's cognizant about it. The reality with suicide is that when somebody's going through a mental health crisis, they are not always thinking logically and rationally. And so when somebody does something when they're not 100% cognizant, or their mental faculties are not 100% in place, you can't penalize a person for doing something when they were having a moment, or having a patch where they really were not cognizant of what they were doing, to the extent of what they were doing, the gravity and the depth of what they were doing. And so we bury them in the cemetery with everybody else. We don't bury them outside the cemetery, because we don't penalize or even look down on somebody that has done something in a moment of a time where they weren't in control of they weren't cognizant, and they weren't in control of their mental faculties. And so tragically, and I say tragically because anytime I'm dealing with a case of suicide where somebody has decided to terminate their lives, and unfortunately in the community working here for so many years, you can imagine, I've dealt with numerous, we bury the person in the cemetery. Tragedy is that, like you said before, if only we had known, how different would it have been? We would never have let it get to that. But it's a cry for help. And when something like this does happen in the community, it's really incumbent upon us to look within ourselves deeply and to think, this one we just lost tragically. What can we do differently to make sure this never happens again?
That's very nice, and I'm so happy that things have changed. So, Rabbi, I want you to touch on something. The service of Hatzalah.
Excellent. Do you know what Hatzalah means?
I know it means rescue or being safe.
Yeah.
I know that I'm supporting Hatzalah 100%.
It comes from save and it comes from help. But yes, Hatzalah is a wonderful organization. We have a chapter here in the city of Aventura.
Yes, and we're presenting to us in the next workshop to the commission, because I think it's a very important service.
It's a very important service. The Hatzalah are basically volunteers. They are a group of volunteers who are mostly, the Aventura has actually right now 8 EMTs in their Hatzalah chapter and 2 paramedics. Okay. For those that don't know, an EMT can do life support. They can add oxygen. They can do basic life support. A paramedic can actually administer medication or even set up an IV. So it's a different level of qualifications. Okay. And so they have 2 paramedics and they have 8 EMTs. These are all volunteers. Now, what they do have, what's fascinating is these are guys that are basically regular citizens. They're bankers, they're lawyers, they're various people in the community that have gone through the training, and they have made themselves available for emergency calls to stop what they're doing, stop in the middle of a meeting, get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, in the middle of a Shabbat Friday night dinner, just to stop the meal with the family. Yom Kippur, holidays, not matter when, they will run out and they will run to the call to try to help somebody in a time of need. And they're volunteers. They are not paid. It is a non-for-profit organization, and their whole purpose, and it ties in beautifully with the month of September, is to basically preserve life and to enhance the life of another, because in Judaism, life is so sacred. And so they've been strategically placed throughout the city of Aventura, and they have them in other cities also. And as a result, their average time that they'll get to a call when somebody calls Hatzalah will be in about 4 minutes, which is incredible. I'll tell you that when I had a lot of pain and I was shivering 2 years ago, and it was actually a gallbladder eruption, which I had to have surgery for. We called Hatzalah, and they were there within about 2 minutes, because 2 of them are my neighbors, and they came running across the street. So they're strategically placed throughout the city, and they'll get there in about 4 minutes. Now, they have something fascinating, and that is that they have 4 doctors who are medical advisors in real time. And what that means is if the paramedic gets to a scene and there's something that they need to consult a physician for, they'll call one of those doctors who are on call, who will take the call 24/7, even if they're with a patient, and they will, on the telephone, guide the paramedic through what they have to do in that moment to preserve the life and to help the person. So they've set up really an incredible network. In Aventura alone, they'll filter between 200 to 300 calls a year. I don't know if you know that. Yeah, a lot of calls.
I didn't know it was that much.
Yeah. And
I know they collaborate with the city. I know they collaborate with the police. So what happens? So they call Hatzalah instead of doing the 911 call?
It's not, listen, 911 is a 911 used to always go through Dade County. Now Aventura, we have our own 911.
Yes, we have our own.
Which is a great thing. The fire department, or rescue rather, is that Dade County. It's not the city's own, okay? So
unfortunately, it would have worked better if it wasn't our city.
I'll tell you what would work better: the time it takes to get to a call.
Yes.
You see, there's a lot of steps before it reaches the call, and when you're dealing with life and death, all those minutes are eternities. Yeah, it could be between life and death. So the fact that they get that within 4 minutes, so they know a lot of the rescue guys. They know them because they end up meeting each other on a call. A lot of times, I don't want to say a lot of times, most of the times, Hatzalah will get there before the ambulance does. And in the times that I've called them, Hatzalah already has oxygen running by the time the rescue guys show up. So it's nothing about the rescue guys. There's a certain protocol, there's a certain process, there's a certain time restraints that will go until you get there. The idea of Hatzalah is to expedite the process and to focus, and they're volunteers. So it's not a job. They're doing it completely out of love. And their job and their dedication and complete focus is to preserve life. So they're there quickly.
I see that your phone is ringing off the hook. And I know that I promised you half an hour.
Yes.
So Rabbi, finish with something. I know it's September. Rosh Hashanah is in less than 2 weeks.
Really?
Really? It's nearly 2 weeks from now. What happens with the people? I know that Rosh Hashanah, you look forward to having all your family, to having all the kids. Like personally, I'm like devastated that my son won't be able to come. That is another blow for our community and
for the world.
For the world, that we cannot be together. But can you please encourage that people do not have big dinners? This is what really created the whole
social distancing is crucial. So I'll just tell you this. You know, there's a saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder. The reality is that, listen, my dad has been home for 6 months already, or almost 6 months in London, United Kingdom. He won't go to the synagogue this Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and he won't have family over. And we talk to him, and we use Zoom, and we talk on the phone, and we do the best we can under the circumstances. These are times where we have to. You spoke about September, prevention of suicide. You spoke about Hatzalah, preserving life. And I'm going to finish by telling you social distancing and respecting the boundaries of this virus is crucial for all of the above, for preserving life and for respecting and enhancing life. The reality is the virus is invisible. So you're dealing with an enemy that's hard to identify. And precautions need to be taken and made to eliminate as much as we can the risk of number one, getting infected, and number two, transmitting it, God forbid, to somebody, which could be life-threatening. And it's an obligation to preserve life, and we need to be very careful about that. So we're going to have synagogue services, but they're going to be social distance. They're going to be a fraction of what we usually have. We're encouraging people to to pray at home if they want to, if they don't feel comfortable coming, or if they're in a certain high risk category. We're lending out the books for the high holidays to people to take home so that they can pray on their own. We're encouraging them. So we're doing what we can. And ultimately, I'll just tell you this, Rosh Hashanah does not mean the new year. It means the head of the year. Rosh is the head in Hebrew, and it means the head of the year, because it's through Rosh Hashanah how the whole year is determined, for the future year is determined. And like the head and the brain controls the body, Rosh Hashanah controls the year. And so it's a time of resolutions. And the resolution needs to be to do whatever we can to live and love deeply, to take care of one another, to be there for one another, to understand that life is sacred, to understand that enhancing the life of another is a sacred, a divine mission. And ultimately, I'll just share you this, that when you go out of your way to help somebody else, you're actually indirectly helping yourself in the greatest way.
I really enjoyed the conversation.
It was a pleasure being here. Thank you.
I wish all the best for this year. And you
Shana
know,
Tova.
Shana Tova. I know that you have everybody in the city at your disposal for anything that you need.
Thank you.
And with that, goodbye, be safe, and
Take
be
care.
well.
Be well. Bye-bye.